in Victorian times, they knew of Tintagel and King Arthur. They were linked together. The earliest writings of Tintagel and King Arthur were back in the 1130s, when Geoffrey of Monmouth, a Welsh cleric writing at Oxford, wrote a history of the kings of Britain, and it was a bestseller of its day. Everyone wanted to read these wonderful stories, and it was from his writings all those years ago, in the 1400s. Thomas Malory wrote of Mort d'Arthur, the death of Arthur. This was the first book printed in the English language on Caxton's printing press. There are wonderful stories through the generations of King Arthur, and they all mention Tintagel, his birthplace. The Victorians certainly knew of King Arthur through these romantic poems. Robert Stephen Hawker was a very famous vicar of his time. He was the parson at Morwenstow, further up the North Cornish coast, up on the border with Devon. And he was very keen on Arthur. He wrote a poem, very famous poem, The Legend of the Sangreal, tales of questing for the Holy Grail, and the connection with the Holy Grail, the Arthur stories. The high Victorian society, they would have been looking for these stories of Arthur, and they were really taken up by him and came to visit Tintagel. And since then we have had many hundreds of thousands of visitors every year coming to Tintagel to see for themselves what they can find from these wonderful stories. The hotel over the cliff was built back at the end of the 19th century, the late 1800s. The local people were hoping that a branch line of the railway could be brought from Camelford Station out here to Tintagel. A lot of visitors were getting here in Victorian times. Tennyson had written his romantic poems, The Idylls of the King, lots of people coming to Tintagel. We didn't get the railway, we still get the visitors. The hotel, it gave work to a lot of local young men back at that time. Times were pretty hard home here in Cornwall in the 1800s, and the local young men had several years of employment building the hotel, so that was a good thing.